What are your thoughts there?
Okay, so the point of reading to young children, I'm thinking out loud, is to model fluent reading, right? We want them to be able, before they can formally read in the formal sense, we want them to be able to hear what it sounds like to be a reader, like the
Mhm.
cadence. I think audiobooks can be a tool, but they have to be used very carefully. I
Okay.
think they can be a tool, but they shouldn't be the only tool that teachers utilize for children to have exposure. Because some kids may really gravitate to audiobooks, right? But
Mhm.
what's the point of reading comprehension? Are you planning your read aloud to pause at certain points and ask them questions to make sure they're really listening to it? Because some of these audiobooks, they sound like movies. Like they sound like whole feature length films.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
are you as a teacher, you using this as a little bit of break for yourself, or you're using this as a different type of experience for your diverse learners?
Hmm. Okay, I didn't. Okay, you're again. I don't teach. So, because I'm like, I never thought about it. That so, could teachers be possibly utilizing audiobooks as a kind of like a break? Which, not that they don't deserve breaks. But, again, I taught second grade one year. I don't know how folks do it.
They're not
I wish I had known about that. I probably would have used some audiobooks for some breaks because tell you what, that tattletailing is no joke. So I get it from that sense, but it's not something that I've thought about. I just think, because I have special ed background. And
Mhm.
so I think about it from a maybe IEP level or maybe 504 type of situation where we want our kids to be able to engage. Because I know teachers will tell me, "Oh, my kids can't read that. That's above their level." And so I'm like, I'm just thinking about options. So I saw your face. Now I kind of want to ask you about.
Well,
I
trigger
kind of want to
point.
ask you
You
about
can't
that
do
now.
that, and it, and I've had that in other roles as a coach,
Mhm.
working with people in in classrooms who may or may not have never worked with students. Say, oh, I don't know about reading this book. I think the vocabulary is above
Yeah.
them. What's the harm in exposing it to them, right?
Mhm.
Think about those 3 and 4 year olds I talked about in regards to space, right? I didn't think they knew anything about space, but at some point they've heard it, they've had exposure to it. So why can't we give all children that equitable access to exposure? Because we never know what they may gravitate to or really take on unless we expose them to it. There's no harm in exposure.
Absolutely. Shout out to Davina. Davina, I'm glad you joined us. She says, yes, unfortunately, I have seen it. There are no instructional informed intent at times when teachers use audibles. However, audibles allow all learners to access knowledge and content. There has to be an informed intent in any resource use. What do
I
you think?
love the framing. Intentional has to be intentional. Are you planning just like you would plan your regular read aloud? Are you planning when you're going to stop, ask comprehension questions, give students the opportunity to turn and talk to one another? Like there has to be a plan behind it, not
Yeah.
shoot, this audio book is 15 minutes, so I'm gonna get a 15-minute breather, right? You just
No
if
one's doing that. No one's doing that,
no
Cammy.
one's doing that, but if that's the case, just turn the radio on. If that's what you're gonna do, like just let them. Right,
Oh,
there has to be an
listen.
intent behind
In the
that. What's the
age in the age of COVID teaching, and thank you, Davina, I appreciate you for hanging out with us today. In the age of COVID teaching, I mean, it's we got a lot of folks that are trying to figure out like when do I get these breaks? When can I kind of get some time to myself? Um, and so we do what we got to do to
yeah,
survive because mental health to me is very important, and so I don't want to take that away from anybody, especially when you're having a hard time. But I was curious because again I hear those comments. Oh, I don't want to teach this book or utilize this book because my kids can't read it. And I like what you said, Cammy. You talked about like before y'all even started reading the book on that space book, you asked them, "What do you know about space?" and then allowed the kids. And would you recommend also that maybe you should put maybe some definitions, some key terms maybe with before you start reading those books as well? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
so one of the things that I do in my work and see as part of the model is with repeated read alouds is
Mhm.
explicitly teaching vocabulary. So
Okay.
pick out essential vocabulary from the text and teach it, create child-friendly definitions, and teach those words very specifically and intentionally.
Okay.
It's about intent.
Intent. Okay, so not use as a break, but also be intentional with our approach to learning. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Kamye. Is there anything that we have not touched on in regards to diverse books that you want to bring out?
One thing I wanted to bring out again was the point you made about our diverse books enough? No,
Yeah.
and I think as adults, before we open up a book, we have to explore and maybe undo and unlearn some things that we have about diverse books. Like, so before you get all gung ho after listening to this, and you're just like, oh, I really want to bring in more diverse books. Do a little bit of unpacking of your own biases. Like, start thinking about, why do I want to do this? What types of books do I want to introduce to students or let other people know about? And just really do your own homework on who the authors are and what the intent and purpose behind those books really are. And really start working on thinking about your own biases, especially if you are a preschool teacher. I think sometimes in the early childhood space, we think of it as this, this paradise of just warmth and happiness, but there's bias there too. So because, the studies show that, Black preschool children are more likely to be suspended or expelled, right? So there's bias even in that space. So really start working on unpacking some of your biases.
What would you say is your favorite book to recommend for any early childhood teacher out there?
Oh, one of my favorite books. So this is probably, y'all might be like, oh, Kamye, you going like almost like the audiobook route. So there's this series on Netflix called Bookmarks. It's called Bookmarks Celebrating Black Voices. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's called Bookmarks Celebrating Black Voices. And that it is it's a 1-season series of Black celebrities reading children's books by Black authors. Like Tiffany Haddish is reading a book about hair. You have Caleb McLaughlin reading the book called Crown. Grace Byers reads her book called, I know the name of the books, but it's a great series. I love all those books there. So I think that would be a great start. So I almost went the audiobook route, but they are actual books, but it's like celebrities reading the books.
Okay. But it's children friendly.
And it's child friendly, yes. It's
okay.
Really, the animations are gorgeous. They actually show the book. I really love Lupita Nyong'o's book called Sulwe. Beautifully written. But I can't pick just one. So I think that series is a great start.
So I was online, maybe it was Facebook, and I even saw a video as well. Dr. Kendi has a newer one called Goodnight Racism. It's as a take on Goodnight Moon, which is supposed to be a children's book. And I think he actually had his daughter read the audio version of the book. Have you seen that book being utilized in classrooms, or would you recommend that book being utilized in classrooms?
I might be a little biased. I'm a fan of Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, so I like all of his work. So I would, but I understand in some places that may not be allowed. I definitely would recommend any of Dr. Kendi's work.
Yeah. And not in those kind of situations, not just for the teacher and the student, but also, as parents, I think those kind of books are helpful. A book that I like to recommend is, I'm going to say it incorrectly because I don't have it in front of me, but it's like It Happened in Our Town.
Yes, I've heard that one.
And that one's about, like, you have two families. You have a white family, you have a black family. There's a police brutality situation that happens within the town. And the book talks about how the two different families basically discuss what happened something happened in our town. I'm going to have to look it up. I'll find it.
I've heard of it. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can see the illustrations right now.
Yes. And I think that one's a good one, especially when you're thinking about prejudice, privilege, and just kind of in police brutality and those kind of conversations. Again, I always tell people, because people will tell me, oh, they're too young to talk about these type of things at 4 and 5 years old. It's just way too early. But I say no, there's ways that we can have those conversations. It's gonna obviously look different for a 4 year old versus a 14 year old, but I think we're doing our kids a disservice if we don't introduce a lot of these concepts early on.
And not only that, sometimes they bring us the concept when we're not ready to answer.
Hmm.
Right? They bring certain things to us, and it's just like, okay, just like that child asking, why no black people in this story?
Right.
We have to have the tools to be able to respond. And sometimes in the moment, you don't know how to respond. And I think as adults, we have to move past, like, I'm the adult, I know all the answers, and
Hmm.
really model for children, hey, or be vulnerable enough to say, you know what? I don't know how to answer that right now. Let's think through how can we find the answer to that. Let's work on that together.
Mm.
That teaches problem solving skills, right? I don't have all the answers, but let's work together to have the answers. Or let me get back to you on that, and really do get back to them.
Really do get follow up. Follow up. Don't be one of those. Okay.
Like really get back to them.
Oh man. Okay, Kamye, I definitely consider you as providing a voice and leading equity. I'd love for you to share one final word of advice to our listeners.
Ooh, one final word of advice. Sometimes it's really scary when you are trying to learn something new or teach something new, but I encourage you to lean into that discomfort. If you're uncomfortable, that means you're on the right track and you're stretching
Mhm.
yourself. And the children that you work with, that you're around, that you live with, that you're raising, that you're teaching, will be all the more better for you stretching yourself and exposing them to diverse literature. All children will be better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we have some folks that want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you online?
The best way to reach me online is through LinkedIn. My name, which is somewhere on the screen, Kamye Hugley. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's on my phone. So feel free to send me a message, and I'll do my absolute best to respond in a timely manner.
And if they want to connect with Fluent Seeds, how do we get there?
Our website, I should know this off the top of my head. The website is Fluent Seeds. Forgive me. I should know. The website is Fluent.
I'm not trying to get you fired, by the
Oh,
way.
no. It's Fluent, Fluent, seeds, seeds.org.
.org.
Fluent.org.
Got it. All right. Well, Kamye, it was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
That was fun. Had a great time with Kamye. As we wrap things up, just blew my mind with a few things. Just the idea of even our 3 and 4 year old children, they might know more than we know. So the idea of saying that my kids don't, I can't have them read this book. It's beyond their level, and you might be surprised. So not only is diversity in books important, and one of the things that we did not talk about that I just now thought about is the representation also in authorship is very important as well. So you want to find diverse books with characters and things like that, but also you want to find books that would represented by people who may have those same lived experiences. And that's the one piece that I forgot to ask. So other than that, I really enjoyed this conversation. Teachers out there, let's stay at it. Let's do our thing. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice in leading equity.